If you were to come into the courtyard here, we're at University and College here in Toronto at the Ontario Power Generation Station building, and there's this sort of courtyard behind me. And in that space, I installed 100 handheld radios, just very small, little battery-operated FM radios, and I also had a fountain, and I installed the fountain, and I used a microphone to capture the sound that the fountain was making, the sound of running water, and then that sound was broadcast using a micro broadcasting technique, so pirate radio essentially. I used took the mic signal and sent it to all of the radios through this broadcasting unit. And so when you come into the courtyard, it's like this very quiet, serene place, because all of the radios were basically just broadcasting the sound of running water. I was looking at these ideas about rivers and natural phenomena that occur that we're sort of not attached to or don't really relate to anymore because of our urban development. So this piece had been done once before in Halifax, where I was investigating another brook, another stream called Freshwater Brook, and I had heard this story about this stream that used to run all the way through the city, but now no longer exists. It's essentially been rerouted underground, and all the buildings and all of the parks and everything are sort of above it, and it's still obviously the water has to go somewhere, but we're just not sort of conscious of it. So I was sort of very interested in sort of bringing that natural phenomenon back into the consciousness. While we're such urban creatures, if you live in the city, you kind of lose touch with the natural world a little bit. And so when I proposed to do a project here for Nuit Blanche, I did some investigation around what the kind of lost streams of Toronto were. And so that's why it was actually situated right here, because this is actually the site where Tattle Creek would have run through back in the day. And so a lot of that, I did have to sort of do research from a number of different sources to kind of figure out exactly where those streams were. But that was like one of my best resources, was that there's actually like a society that's interested in that. So I thought that was really cool. I'm interested in both, like obviously looking at the natural phenomena and our relationship with the natural world, but I'm also interested in technology, and I think that the use of radio broadcasting, although it's sort of like, for me, it's like was sort of like the most practical thing to do in order to make this piece work for me, it's also conceptually important that there's this relationship between, sound waves and water, and how radio transmissions and other transmissions are present in the air, are present in our environment, but we're not really conscious of them. So, microwave waves and all these other kinds of radiation, cell phones, radio transmissions, et cetera, they're all just in the air. We're absorbing them with our bodies, and we're not conscious of it at all. So I like that relationship between the two, those two ideas. I come from NSCAD, Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, and that's a very conceptually based school. So I think that is an underlying influence in my life, in terms of I really need my work to have some kind of thing other than just an aesthetic relationship. So essentially, I don't just want to make a good-looking painting. I don't want to just make a sculpture that's wholly formal. It has to say something else or be about something else. In my work, I guess I often employ these provisional materials and recycled materials, and I've been trained as a sculptor, and I know how to do techniques of making things from scratch, like casting metal and carving plaster, carving stone. I know how to do all of those things, but at one point I just decided that I didn't really want to make new things in the world, or I didn't want to contribute to making new things in the world. So I've always challenged myself to try and make interesting things out of the stuff that already exists. And the radio broadcasting itself, one of my earliest projects was a collaboration with my partner Stephen Kelly, and he was really interested in radio broadcasting, and he had taught himself, basically all of his work is really electronically based, computer programming, all this kind of stuff, and so he taught himself how to make radio transmitters, and then we did a lot of collaborative works about the act of like doing a pirate radio station and encouraging artists to use broadcast as a medium, and so that's like sort of always stayed with me. Often the thing itself helps to determine what the form will be. Using the artist's hand to make something, but also sort of allowing the material to be itself in a way. And so I think that's something that I employ over and over and over again. So a lot of my most current sculptural works have been doing this like sort of act of stacking. It results in sort of a minimalist aesthetic of a repetitive form. The other thing that I'm really obsessed with too is this idea of static and white noise. And because I think what I'm concerned about is, you know, we have all of this technology and we use it, but then it's only as good as the signal that comes to it. Things like history, they were looking at things around location, and I think that especially for those types of projects, I think it's really important that you have something that is sort of related to the site.